In this video, we're going to understand how to go from a ratio table to create ordered pairs to finally make a graph. So let's look at our scenario that we have to begin with. A recipe for oatmeal raisin cookies requires 2 eggs for every 1 dozen cookies. So I see this word for, and that's my clue of where I'm looking for my ratio. So this value in front of it, 2 eggs for every 1 dozen cookies, that's going to give me my information. So I'm going to take that information and start plugging it into my table. As you can see, a lot of it's already filled in for us. So let's look at our first column, which says that for the eggs that we have, if we have 2 dozen eggs, then we're going to have 1 dozen cookies. So if we have 4 dozen eggs, we have 2 dozen cookies. 6 dozen eggs, 3 dozen cookies, etc. So these numbers are based on the ratio that's given to us. Our job is to figure out what is the rule, what is the process to go from one column to the next. So we're trying to think about, if I start here with my eggs, how do I get to see my cookies? So in this case, we're going to look at 2, and we're going to look at 1, and we're going to say, how do I go from 2 to 1? Well, if you need other clues, you can look down your columns. How do I go from 4 to 2? How do I go from 6 to 3? Hopefully at some point you'll be able to see that the rule is that we divide by 2. So the rule is going to be the same. The process is the same for all of these scenarios, but it's really important to identify what the rule is. Now we're going to take our values from our ratio table and we're going to write them as ordered pairs. So an ordered pair has to have a parentheses and a comma to separate the two values. The first value comes from the first column, the second value comes from the second column. So my first ordered pair is 2, 1. The next one would be 4, 2. The next would be 6, 3, etc. So I'm just looking at my information and making the ordered pairs based on the numbers I already have. And it's important to put parentheses around your ordered pairs. All right, now we're going to move down here and look at this thing where it says equation. Now, we've actually already figured out the equation. We're going to look at the letter E, because that represents eggs, and the letter C, which represent cookies, and we're going to make a number sentence to explain this relationship. So if we start with E, in order to get to C, we need to divide by 2. So we're using our rule. E divided by 2 gives us C. So 6 eggs divided by 2 gives us 3 dozen cookies. We could also write it as E with a fraction bar over 2 equals C, because this means the same thing. Fraction equals division. So now that we've done these 2 steps, the last step is to take this information and to graph it on our coordinate plane over here. So we have to label what we're working with. So the first column is eggs. So we're going to label eggs on the bottom. And we're going to label cookies on the vertical axes. So to graph my coordinate points, I'm going to start at this center point down here. This is called the origin. And what I need to do is label. So if I'm looking at my eggs, I'm looking at this column, going all the way back here, looking at the very first column of my eggs. And I need to label where those numbers are. So let's start by saying, okay, I can count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I count by ones, all of my numbers will fit on the bottom axes. So that works out. And my next axes, I'm looking at this column of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know that that will definitely fit. So I can do the same value here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do a couple more just for good measure. So now I'm going back and I'm looking at the ordered pairs that I created. So these ordered pairs, I'm going to highlight the first one to start, and we're going to take that and we're actually going to plot this point. So I have to remember that in order to graph, I need to move horizontally, which sometimes we call running. So I need to do that first. And then my second step is to move vertically, and we sometimes call that jumping. Okay, so we need to run before we jump. So going back to our ordered pair, I need to go over 2, and then I'm going to go up 1 and plot my point. That's the point 2, 1. I'm going to start again from the origin, and I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to go up 2 and plot my point. So the first number is the horizontal. So now I'm at 6. And the second number is the vertical. 1, 2, 3. Well, the next point is 8. So now I'm moving over here. 8 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. And the last one is 10 up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have all these points. I've labeled them. All of my axes are labeled. And the last step is to just draw a line through all of my points. Again, I start at the origin. Try and make my line as straight as possible. And it is important to put an arrow at the end to show that this pattern could continue if the data continues.